Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. Welcome during the first one we've done during the summer holidays. For those who've got kids, etc., thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Also, thank you to everybody who's joined recently, our new members. I know we've had a number of new tenants and things joined us, so great to have so many people of all walks of social housing life with us in our community, and we're growing all the time. To those who I've not met, to those who are new to this forum, my name is Matt Baird. I am the founder and host of the Social Housing Roundtable. I host these nearly every single Tuesday. I say nearly because we did miss one, and I'm still a little bit gutted about it. Nearly every Tuesday this year, completely for free on this platform, 11 till 12. The link you have will get you access to every session moving forward. And if you ever miss a session, they're also available on YouTube and Spotify and Amazon podcasts. The idea behind these was to bring people together every week to have really authentic discussions around a number of key themes. And I'm always amazed when we keep finding more and more discussion points. Sometimes we're revisiting old ones, sometimes we're engaging in new ones, but there is such a breadth of work going on in the social housing world. And obviously there's a lot of pressure, I think, going on with a lot of us who support refugees and support a lot of people from very diverse backgrounds at the moment. So I hope everyone who is listening, joining, is doing okay, and their residents and things are all okay as well. Day to day, I'm a recruiter, so I've been recruiting in social housing for over 11 years. So if you are looking for recruitment support at any point, that literally funds this being kept running for free. So if you're enjoying these platforms and you need recruitment support, please do reach out. They go hand in hand, and it's why it can continue to be offered for free for all. So, talking about recruitment, I was introduced to Chance and James, who I'm going to pass on to in just a moment, from Bridge of Hope Careers, actually by Hazel, who's also with us today, who went to one of their sessions at the Housing 2024 conference. I said, Matt, I need you to introduce you to these guys. They're doing some amazing work and really engaging in a different way in terms of the recruitment space, but also in terms of really trying to bring residents along with the journey in a very different way than what we've maybe seen before. Now, bring on an alternative recruiter to myself, some people might go, well, that's a bit mad. Is that not competition? Absolutely not. There are many different ways we need to access recruitment services, and there are many different people we need to engage in order to get the right people for our companies. So it's my absolute honour to introduce Chance and James. I'm going to pass across to themselves to introduce Bridge of Hope Careers. To anyone who is new at how this format tends to work, they'll now kind of discuss some of the key themes today for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Feel free to put any points you like in the chat during that time. Feel free to make introductions during that time in the chat box. After then, it will become a more open discussion. You can either put things in the chat and I'll bring your points in, or if you're comfortable to do so, use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen under reactions. I'll bring you into the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. So on that, Chance, James, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. And hello, everybody. Lovely to see you. Big shout out to Hazel for very kind words and also teeing this whole thing up. Much appreciated. I'm going to kick off. My name is James. So I'm the founder of Bridge of Hope, and I was born lucky. Well, actually, that's probably a little bit of an understatement. I was born white, male, and exceptionally privileged.
And I'm Chance Bleu-Montgomery. I'm the partner support manager and all our evangelist on anything to do with social mobility for Bridge of Hope Careers. And unlike James, I was born I won't say somewhat, I was born terribly unlucky.
And we work for a social enterprise, as you heard, called Bridge of Hope Careers. We've got a fairly unique claim to fame. It's that we've all been locked up. In my case, in a psychiatric ward just outside New York.
And in my case, a prison in Brixton and a mental hospital in Hackney.
So you probably weren't expecting that as a start of a 10. But what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey to the Bridge of Hope and how it works. I'm then going to ask Chance to tell you about his remarkable journey. Chance is a graduate of our program and looks after all of our partner network. We'll then explain a little bit about how it works. And then, as you say, Matt, we'll circle back and have a wider conversation. So let me kick off. As you heard before, I was born white, male, and very privileged. That probably was the understatement of the century. I was actually so privileged I was sent away to the world's most famous boarding school. Yeah, that one. I was in the same class as a bloke called Cameron, who went on to run the country. 2 years below a buffoon called Johnson, who ran the country into the ground. So you kind of get the level of privilege. you get the level of privilege that I had. From there, I went into the drinks world. So via university, I went into, worked for a wonderful brand called Guinness and Diageo, and life was amazing. And I got to 2002, then got transferred with my young family off to America. Everything really was pretty fantastic. Climbed pretty well to the top of the corporate ladder with Diageo, who were the biggest drinks company in the world at the time. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you may be thinking, bearing in mind that I set up a social enterprise quite a lot, but that would be the understatement of the century. Basically, if any crap could happen, it did happen on an epic basis. And having been possibly the luckiest person on the planet for 40 odd years, my luck deserted me epically. It all started by being made redundant for the first time in 2008. I was then made redundant 5 times more in the next 6 years. I was swindled, I was sued, and all my money taken away. And so there was a fateful day where I had to go to get the family shopping. And I had 3 hungry teenagers, but all the money I could cobble together was $5.41. I vividly remember the exact amount. So I went to a supermarket, a Walmart, and I had a stark decision. What do I do? Do I buy a loaf of bread and some Nutella, or do I buy some milk and some cereal? And I think everybody realizes we're put on this planet to do 2 things, one of which is to procreate. The second is to feed our offspring. And I could just about manage the former, but I was patently unable to do the latter. And that was when my wiring came undone. And for the next 3 weeks, I went to my large office, shut the door, and I wasn't actually able to turn the computer on. Not surprisingly, I was then told maybe you should go and have a talk to a doctor. So I went down to see a doctor, had a long conversation, and they said to me, look, here's 2 pieces of paper. The first one was a list of basically drugs that I had to go and get from the local pharmacy. And the second was a very strict instruction. It said that I had to go to the local hospital immediately and do nothing else under any circumstances. And there was a team of 8 people waiting for me. So I did the obvious thing, and I tore both pieces of paper up, threw them in the trash, and went home and told everybody there was nothing wrong with me. Denial was complete. But denial is not that good a strategy. I'm sure everybody appreciates that. And funnily enough, it didn't work so well for me either. So 5 days later, I was in front of another psychiatrist. And this time they turned around and said what was definitely the scariest sentence I'd ever heard, which is you're going to be sectioned for the foreseeable future. And I actually thought that was going to be for life. So I spent a couple of weeks in a psych ward and came out of there. And it was agreed that I'd come back to the UK to recover. I did that and talked to a couple of doctors when I came back to the UK, and both of them said, look, there's no question that you've got bipolar disorder, which initially I was like, well, what the hell is that? And they're like, well, it used to be called manic depression. And then, of course, I was full denial. Then I slowly accepted it. And now it's absolutely my superpower. But for the next 5 or 6 weeks, my entire life started to unravel. And we've all read about the Maslow pyramid. Well, mine disintegrated into a small heap of rubble. My marriage went along with all 3 of my children. My corporate career went, and everything I owned on the planet basically went in 4.5 weeks, which wasn't really part of the plan. But I couldn't feel sorry for myself because I had to try and feed my children, which I've been failing to do for the last 6 weeks. But I wasn't allowed to do anything that involved sitting behind a desk. So I thought, well, I'll go get a job at a pub. I know how to pour a pint, but they wouldn't give me one. I thought, well, I'll try a coffee shop. They also wouldn't give me one. In fact, nobody would give me a job. And having been white, male, and as you heard, very privileged, I didn't know there were barriers to employment because it never affected me. But there they were, talk to the hand. Fortunately, there was a frozen meat factory down the road, and they really didn't care less about the fact where I'd come from a psychiatric ward. All they wanted to know was I prepared to get up at 4 in the morning, work at 18-hour days on less than minimum wage? And I'm like, absolutely, I'm your man. So I did that for a year while my classmate was the prime minister, clawed my way back into the corporate world and got laid off again. And that was a seminal moment in my life. It was 6 years ago, and I sat on a church wall just in North London trying to work out what the hell was happening with my life. Why was it unraveling the way it was? And I had a bit of a talking to from somebody above who made it very clear that they were really not that impressed about my ability to get people drunk, and that I should do something with my life. So I decided then and there I was going to try and help other people get jobs. The reason being, I'd kind of had this visceral experience of the power of a job, what it did for you, your family, your finances, your self-worth. Bloody amazing. But also the utter devastation unemployment caused. And I'm like, I want to try and help other people, less fortunate myself, get jobs. I know it sounds incredibly naive, and it was incredibly naive. So I thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try and talk to organizations that clearly are brilliant with people and find out what they do. And I rang up 42 charities, and they looked after anybody from people who've been in prison to neurodiverse, to veterans, to refugees, pick your poison. And I spoke to each CEO and I said, what do you do to get your clients, back on their feet? And then what do you do to get them into work? And all 42 did an incredible job of getting their clients back on their feet and ready for a job. And I'm like, okay, wow, that's brilliant. What about trying to get them into employment? And then there was a stony silence. And all 42 said, we don't do anything to try and get them into employment, which struck me as kind of bonkers. And also, being bipolar, I was like, wow, we always see the opportunity and connect the dots. I'm like, wow, what an amazing talent pool. All these brilliant people who've maybe had a tumble or have conditions, etc., but they're really, really keen to get back into employment. They're supported by world-class charities, but nobody's, creating that bridge to them. And on the other side, there were all these employers wanting to be more diverse, lacking skills, lacking candidates. I'm like, well, why don't we connect the bridge? And that was the genesis of the Bridge of Hope. So connecting job-ready talent, originally coming from charities, into employers. Now I'm going to hold my breath there now and ask Chance to tell you about his journey, and then we'll come back and explain how Bridge of Hope works, and we'll take it from there. But thank you all for your time. Over to you, sir.
Cool, brilliant. Cheers. Thank you, James. Yeah, like I said, I wasn't born as lucky as James. I was born incredibly unlucky. In fact, and this is where my passion for this work comes from. I was unfortunately born into a family where my dad didn't think I was his. And so I experienced huge amounts of physical abuse as a child, the first being before I was 1 year old. And that left me with what I thought were birthmarks until I was 21. Mum told me what really happened, because she thought, you're a man now, you need to know the truth. So I didn't feel significant growing up. I ran away a lot. And I've met some friends and they made me feel significant and loved, in fact, a lot of the time. But the byproduct of that was they were from the antisocial membership. And it was only going to be a matter of time before I got into trouble. And I did. So by the time I was 16, I ended up in prison. By the time I was 18, my sister took me to a mental hospital because the childhood trauma and depression had really taken its toll by then. And so I tried to make some changes to my life, not to much great success. And fast forward, my sister, who was my absolute rock, as if it couldn't get any worse, she died. She died of cancer young. And I didn't want to talk about it because then that would make it real, which is the worst possible thing you could do, because within a year, my life completely fell apart, completely unraveled. And I ended up back inside one last time. But this time I asked myself this question. I said, do you like who you are, who you've become? And the answer was a solid no. In fact, I thought if this was going to be my existence for my future, I didn't see the point in having a life. I'll never forget the day I really didn't see a point in carrying on. So I was left with these choices, literally, to either jump off a cliff or change. And so I threw everything and the kitchen sink and the neighbor's kitchen sink at change, and spent 3 years and 10 months almost every day in therapy to unlock some pain and to deal with those childhood traumas, while spending 5 years studying with the Open University to give myself an education my childhood didn't afford unto me, and done swaves of personal development programs. And then this incredible day came upon me where I was just filled with ebullience, and the warm tears of joy came flooding uncontrollably down my face. And it was because for the first time in my entire life, I felt freedom. No more emotional discombobulation, no more anger. I was filled with forgiveness and topped to the brim with self-respect. And I realized two things had happened to me on that day. One, my childhood experiences were no longer going to define my future. And two, I'd finally become the person I was always meant to be, And that was the day I decided whatever work I'm doing, it must be about changing lives, nourishing communities, and making a real difference. And I went on to do just that, and enjoyed the support from some of the charities we work with. We work with 105 of them. I was introduced to James Fellows here, and we became friends for about a year and a half. I keep saying this and keep having to remind people that we are still friends.
Hopefully.
Yes. And he kept saying, come over to Bridge of Hope, have a look what we're doing. And my God, when I finally came across, I wish I'd come immediately across, because for me, this was like an invitation to heaven. And I'll explain to you why. I was successfully transforming the lives of young men who'd come into contact with the criminal justice system, because I have the blueprint for that change. But now with Bridge of Hope, I can support everyone. Veterans, people with neurodivergence like myself, people with different abilities. I prefer the term than disabilities, women returners, the whole lot. And I thought, this is where I want to live, because finally I could see a pathway where candidates who were system impacted could walk towards employers who were looking for them. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. And we wanted it to be way more than fantastic. We wanted the candidate journey itself to have nourishment every step of the way. So we created the coalition of skills and support partners. So if you're a tenant or one of our referral partners feeding in candidates from the charities, they can access this support. So candidates who might want extra qualifications, they can access those. For candidates who are carers and have children, there's the government portal. They can access all that support from there as well. But there were two that were really important to us, and that was financial support. So now a candidate can access wages before payday through signposting. So if a candidate's worked 2 weeks, they can access 2 weeks' wages, not 3. So it's fair on both sides. But the importance of this is because it doesn't matter who you are. You go into a new job, a new role, you're out of your comfort zone. Now, if you're experiencing social anxieties from neurodivergence or imposter syndrome and this type of thing, and a utility bill comes flying in, whilst you're trying to work your month in hand, it's going to raise anxiety. So now a candidate can say, right, I'll take a week out of the 2 weeks I've worked, pay that bill and carry on down the good path. And the other piece of financial support that we love to signpost for any of our candidates is the free financial advice. Any one of the candidates can get it, but it doesn't stop there. It's extended to the whole family. And the reason for this is because if you're the one in your family that's landed that good job or got a diploma or a degree, it's not just yours. The whole family just got a job. The whole family just got a degree. That's the experience of a first in family grad, for instance. And so we know everyone in that household is banking their hopes in one person. And so, and anyone with any financial troubles, it's taught to chance. He'll sort you out. He knows what he's doing. But it's a privilege to be in a position to help your family members and friends. But it's still a financial pressure. So now a candidate can say, right, cousin Johnny, of course I'll support you. I'll introduce you to some professionals. They'll create a budget and clear path for you to get out of your financial troubles, maintain your independence, and that reduces the pressure from our candidates. But it gives them a feeling that they have something there to turn around and support family members with, which is really important to us.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chance. And quite a remarkable journey. I'm sure everybody would agree. So just sort of how does it work? So I'm conscious of time. So basically, as we said, what we try to do is connect candidates from underrepresented groups to inclusive employers. So we started as a small charity. We did this for 2 years. It went pretty well, but it wasn't that scalable. With the pandemic, we had to flip our model and we went fully digital and said, right, let's just make it not just people coming from charities, but also people coming from boot camps, from non-Russell unis, from social enterprises, and of course from social housing organizations as well. And our service is 100% free to those candidates. It's 100% free to the referral partners. And you literally can just point them towards Bridge of Hope, and there they are. We've got best part of 6,500 candidates jobs right now for fantastic people like that. And then on the flip side, we typically work with large corporates, but across the board, anybody from Diageo to Kia, Jacobs, et cetera, but we're now having a number of conversations with other leading housing associations, but they don't have to be big ones. And we're talking to several mid-sized ones as well. And we would love to try and help. And the way basically there's the refer your tenants or your residents, as I hear it called, but also we can bring fantastic candidates to you. They've got lived experience, they've got built-in empathy, having been through the ringer as well. They probably haven't got the skills you're looking for, but you can train them that. But they bring the lived experience. So it effectively is, very simplistically, is unlimited job postings, unlimited sourcing, and unlimited candidates. And I see a hand going up. Do you mind just popping your question in the chat, and we'll come to it in a couple of moments? Is that okay? Thank you so much. So if you imagine that's our premise. Basically, we want to just try and really move the needle and put as many people into work as possible. We also have a program, if you wanted to kind of really lean into a particular area or a particular talent pool, etc., called Social Boost. And do you want to explain how that works?
Absolutely. So the social boost was absolutely important to us because you've got people like myself, I've got a previous conviction that we struggle to get jobs on Reed, LinkedIn, Indeed, all that stuff. My partner who's autistic and has ADHD has never got a job through those traditional pathways, yet she's a lecturer at a university. Her work on speech and language is taught around the world. And she's an expert in intersectionality. How do people like this struggle to get through those pathways to jobs? So we needed to find out where they went if they're not on Indeed, if they're not on Reed, etc. So we found them, and we found them in chat rooms. We found them on forums. We found them on Spotify, listening to podcasts about how crap it is trying to get a job with autism or as an ex-offender. And then we're able to use programmatic media and put these adverts right in front of their faces, saying something to the tune of, we know you've given up, but for once your neurodivergence will go in your favor. Here's an employer looking for you. Now, we trialed this out with the Royal Mail. They wanted 200 women returners really quickly, and we used this technology. They got over 5,000 odd click-throughs and a superfluous amount of applications. But the one that I really like to shed spotlight on is the one that I genuinely thought was a prank. And this was from one of our clients. BEA Systems asked us to use this technology to find them diverse engineers in Barrow-in-Furness. And I was, yep, you heard that right. So we were like, okay, diverse engineers in Barrow, let's have a look. We might get about, 3, maybe 5 candidates. At least they'll meet their return on investment. And we got creative, and we included candidates who live just outside Barrow as well, who were willing to work and live inside Barrow. And we got back 536 applications, and absolutely blew our mind. And it really crystallized my initial thoughts, that candidates who are system impacted are nowhere to be seen on these traditional pathways, and we now know how to find them.
And great. And just to sum up, because we are conscious of time and want to make sure we have a proper conversation, those are the sort of 2 or 3 major things we do, but also we do help all of our clients win tenders. So if any of you have got big bids or RFPs you need to do, part of our proposition, in fact, you don't even have to be a client. We're happy to try and help you do that. We can give you that difference. We've just done it for 2 of our clients. Both won big bids, particularly in a particular tight geography. And because they're able to say, we work with Bridge of Hope, they've got 3,000 candidates within 10 miles of Dudley, 8,000 within 20, and we can do a social boost. So think of us more of an inclusive and social value partner. Each of our candidates is worth £20,000, so it makes a massive difference. But we're now going to have we're going to stop and draw stumps. We welcome any conversation. I apologize to the gentleman I cut off earlier. Would love to hear your question. And there's some very nice comments in the chat, so thank you so much for some of your lovely comments. But over to the group for questions.
Thank you, James, and thank you. Yeah, you're right. I mean, firstly, I think I'm echoing the points in the chat, which is thank you both just for sharing your story so authentically. It's not easy. I think sometimes people take it for granted that it's an easy thing to come on and share a story like that. It really, really isn't. There's, I've talked to you both about some of my own experiences. I haven't shared everything on this platform, and I haven't always been wanting to. To share yours is amazing. So thank you very, very much. I can always see Jess, who is having to go shortly from Sangaban, saying that she'd love to speak with you, which is obviously brilliant. And Lisa said that she's going to follow up on the recording. And as I said at the beginning, to anyone who missed it, these sessions are recorded. It will go up onto YouTube and Spotify, so please do follow up. But Jim Hennigan, I know you had a question for us, so do please feel to come in. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, hi, Matt. Hello. Hi, Chance. Hi, James.
Hi.
Great what you're doing. Really enjoy it. Similarly, in my own experience, much the same as yourself, Chance, but I worked in psychiatric care as an auxiliary and support worker. And as I say, I've said before, it's a matter that you can't work in a paint factory, as they say, without getting splashed. So I've found my release has come from not working at the moment. I've kind of used the last 20 years or so to get involved with the housing sector as a tenant and become involved in all this. And this has helped me since December to come off my medication that I was on. And I kind of use this experience, as a learning curve, having worked across the country in different nursing jobs, sales and marketing as well myself, similar to yourself there, James. But I just think that what you're doing is great. It's a good opportunity. It's an untapped resource that hasn't been considered. And I
Absolutely.
just think you're both doing a great job. But as I say, from my own point of view, I use all my time for these webinars and tasks and trying to do what I can to be, inclusive of everyone and try to get all tenants' voices heard and, try and represent that. And that's how I've got through my bit of a rough time with, stress, anxiety and depression, chronic for over 30 odd years. I'm working with an autism myself as well. Okay,
You are
thank you.
remarkable. You're so remarkable. Thank you so much for your kind
Thank you,
words.
Jim.
It's people I'm sending love out to you right now. We need more people like you. We've created an ambassadors network for that very reason, to bring together all this passion, because there are so many people in our country that are passionate about social mobility and making changes. So that means a lot. So I'll reach out, James. I'll reach out as soon as, and I'll send you a link to join the ambassador network, where you can join some more like-minded people as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jim. And we got a question from Gabby. There's quite a few questions, and I apologize, but the most recent one I see. What has been your best turnaround experience in terms of managing to change an organization or leader's mindset about hiring those under your wing? I think that's a great question. I'm actually going to ask Chance to just explain how we try to do that, because we have a whole kind of model around organizational mindset shift, which we call an immersive masterclass, which we've used and it's gone incredibly well. So maybe you could explain the one we did for with Ford.
Yeah, absolutely. So we run. I'd gone to masterclasses up and down the country, and I realized there was one thing missing from them, and that was empathy. So we created a learn with empathy model to shift hearts and minds, to create organizational mindset shifts. So it covers all the great stuff like understanding neurodiversity, look at hiring for resilience and grit, which are the #1 predictors for success, understanding intersectionality, unconscious biases, all that wonderful stuff. And they are filled, dappled with the real lived experience stories to build in some levels of empathy there. And in the part of the series where we cover neurodiversity, we play games, and the games are designed to make you feel what it might be like to have cognitive overload from ADHD, or feel what it might be like to be dyslexic, building in heavy levels of empathy there as well. And we got some incredible reviews. The guy who ran Ford Motors Global, he said this was by far the best masterclass he'd been to in his entire career, which spanned over 20 years. And 3 weeks later, a lady from NHS Business said almost verbatim the same thing. So this is what we do. We really do shift the hearts and minds in the space to open up those doors and the mindset for the change that we need in our country.
And just building on that, if any of you have enjoyed this morning, and there's been some very nice comments, and you're thinking, well, that's great, but what about my organization's mindset? We'd be very happy to do a lunch and learn. We don't charge any money. We'll come and do a talk to your team. We're on a mission. You probably can tell. Because without changing the hearts and minds and get the organization to really embrace it, it's never going to happen. So yes, we have a job board. That's great, but that's much more functional. What we're really trying to do is change the hearts and minds of organizations across the country to really embrace inclusive hiring.
Absolutely.
But lovely question, Gabby. Thank you.
And another one from Gabby. Yes, great turnaround. I've got a personal turnaround I could mention as well, and absolutely does bring huge amounts of hope knowing that James Timpson is sitting in that driving seat. It really does. A personal change that we had was when our CEO sent me a young man to mentor. I would say his name is Mr. X, not to keep him out of the picture. And he'd come into contact with the criminal justice system, you know, got himself into trouble and all the rest of it. And we got him a job in Felton Prison. So he's now gone back to prison, but as a member of staff, and he's supporting young men and helping to change their lives as well.
This episode of the Social Housing Roundtable is sponsored by Alertical. Alertical helps as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. Alertical's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Calls, an easier, simpler and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare and smoke alarms. Alertical works with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and landlords. In 2022, Alertical won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023 won Housing Supplier of the Year. I'm delighted to have them as our sponsor of the Social Housing Roundtable throughout 2024. How do you both find it? And this is just from a general point of view, because like I say, I mean, I've worked in recruitment solely now for 11 and a half years, and there's always, I think it's very easy, isn't it, for us all to go, yeah, we find people, we find jobs, we put people together and it's great. And everyone's, it's a slog, it's hard work. There's a lot of no's, there's a lot of people who aren't engaging. There's a lot of, from both sides of the coin. And and that's from, you know, from a candidate perspective, from a, you know, from a client perspective. When speaking to people who, I'm going to try and find the right way to phrase this. One thing that's come up when I've done sessions on the roundtable and others before on recruitment, we've talked about glass ceilings. We've talked about businesses which actually say one thing and do something else. We've talked about candidates not enjoying the experience themselves. And obviously you've mentioned there around diversity of not just neurodiversity and racial diversity, but diversity in general. It's great to hear that, you know, you're looking at the 9 characteristics rather than just run just 1 or 2. When working with candidates in this space, how long is that journey often taking for you? Because I think that's something often that can be, you know, forgotten about. It isn't just you kind of, oh, here's someone on a forum, I'll tell you what, let us know who you are, we'll find you a job. It isn't that easy. It isn't that simple. There's often how do you go about building trust? How do you go about really allowing people to trust you, that actually not just that you've got their best interest at heart, but that also you are trying to help? Because that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I think, well, if we were answering it 4 years ago when we were a small charity, we were doing that all ourselves. So we did all the employability stuff ourselves. It was all about confidence and trust and, you know, job readiness, etc., etc. We're now obviously a social enterprise. We're miles bigger now. So we're actually just trying to be the channel. So we're trying to work with the third parties that do that work, whether they be a charity or a housing association or social enterprise, skills partners, etc., etc. So we try to work with them. They're doing that amazing work. We just want to provide that access, but also some support along the way, all of which is signposted, but at scale. So we're not doing the hand-holding anymore. We did do it, but you know, we'd need an army of 4,000 people in our company to do that. So, and there are all these brilliant organizations that are doing it. So, but what was lacking was the connective tissue. What was lacking was the channel. And when we talk to clients, they say the same thing. They're like, we're working with 10 different charities, and we're like, how's that working out? There's like, oh, it's a, you know what, because there's no mechanism to connect the two. So we're trying to be that mechanism, but we do it with empathy. It's not just a bland job board. It's really trying to create a community. Chance mentioned our ambassador network, so we're trying to get all of the referral partners to work with each other, collaborate with each other. So it's trying to change that mindset, but we're not doing the individual hand-holding anymore.
But it's still, I mean, the trust has had to come from somewhere and from referrals. And as you say, it might have been 4 years ago, but those things still matter, and the bedrock of those still matter to make a change. What are clients saying to you then? So obviously you just mentioned there the vast range of businesses that you're working with. What are they saying about the staff that you're employing from is non-traditional work? Yeah. The terminology is interesting, but from non-traditional recruiting methods, you know, you're not just sticking on a job board and seeing who's got the best CV. you're really engaging with people in different ways. What are clients saying to you? Because obviously we've had the success stories of how candidates are feeling and the jobs they've got, but what are clients saying to you?
Yeah, it really, I mean, quite a lot depends on the sector, to be honest. We're doing a lot in the construction built environment sector, and they are actively going after the ex-offender community. And they're finding they work, the feedback is they do definitely work a lot harder. They come with a lot more resilience and grit. So there's a lot of positive feedback we're getting there from for that particular group. One of our clients is called Molson Coors, so they're one of the biggest beer companies in the world. And they've gone the extra mile, and for all their early careers, excluding the graduates, but blue collar and early careers, they've thrown the CV out completely, and they're like, we don't use the CV anymore. We think it's an anachronism, and we agree. And we just hire people based on potential and passion. Now they have an assessment. They have, it's not like they just sort of hire people for the hell of it. And they're finding a way better clientele. And then in this space, the housing space, and we're relatively new to this space, but the ones we've talked to say that not necessarily coming from Bridge of Hope, but they're saying people who come with lived experience perform way, way better. They may have no clue about the functional jobs that are required. But versus somebody who does understand the functional jobs, but basically is stale, bored, entitled, what the hell it might be, it's miles, miles better. So it's like getting somebody with lived experience and empathy, and they're prepared to A, do the jobs that nobody else is to do, and B, actually have some degree of compassion and empathy for the people they're working with as well. So, that's the feedback we're getting in this space this is phenomenal. You're just going to have to invest some time in training them on the functional stuff. But hey,
it's also a true understanding as well of what people are going through, isn't it, Chance?
Yeah, absolutely. And really sort of acknowledging those transferable skills. The reason why Timpson's has done what they've done so successfully is hiring 30% of their staff from prisons is because they focused on people who used to be drug dealers, took them out of that world and put them into a legitimate business world. But they chose them because they had all those transferable skills. So people are demonstrating really great skills, but in insalubrious spaces. And it's for us sometimes to bring them out of those spaces and give them and align them with something positive so that they can really flourish with those very same skills and qualities. And Cognizant, one of our partners who we work with, they actually came up to me and said, we've hired 2 returning citizens from prison, and guess what? They're the best 2 people we've got on that floor. And this was just before they became clients. They heard the stories and was inspired by that and just went out and made the move. And haven't turned back. So there's so much great things that are happening out there just from talking to people. They don't have to be clients, just as they're inspired by Bridge of Hope and are making moves is what we really makes my heart sing.
That's lovely. And we got some more lovely comments, but also quite a few people are taking us up on the come and do a talk to your organization. That's brilliant. The more the merrier. We're happy to do them all day, every day, frankly, because that's our mantra. Jim, I think you had another question. You might be on mute.
Not so much a question, more of a statement. Years ago I worked at BT in the call centre, and they came around, and because I was on Centre 6, worked for a company called Kelly Services. So you work with them, and then if you were good enough, they'd take you on at BT. Anyway, they had this team from BT came down to ask for ideas. And one of the suggestions I gave them was that perhaps they should look at people being released from prison and give them the opportunity to move into the workplace. And this was something that at the time they did say they were taking on board. Whether they have since, I don't know. But certainly the opportunities that are out there. I had another younger brother who set up an organisation called TAG for BAME communities in Liverpool. Right. That's a few years ago now. Sadly, he's not with us any longer. But similarly, getting people into work and helping them into work from minority backgrounds, and even employing them himself within his own organisation, which was magazine. He had Ambulance Today, international magazine, and he used to try and bring people into apprenticeships and things like that and give them training in publishing and things. So another one he did was Press Gang, similarly the same kind of thing. Kids from school who wouldn't get an opportunity to get into journalism could come into it through that.
Love it.
people who may have differences of learning and things like that. So.
Yeah, and if any of you have got organizations doing really great stuff, I mean, we're in the collaboration business. We can't do inclusive hiring by ourselves, but we can make a dent with other organizations. So please feel free to put us in touch with them. If nothing else, if they've got good people, they can use our service. It's for free to put people into work. But thank you, Jim. Gabby,
Thanks, James. Yeah, as I say, I'll bring Gabby in.
Yeah, and you said some lovely comments earlier. Thank you, Gabby. That was very kind of you.
No problem. And my cat wants to join in apparently as well. Go move. I can't see the screen.
Stay away from Vice President Ken.
No. I had a question around like retention, because we're talking about getting people into work. And I was thinking of a really short anecdote from my my PhD research, which back in the day was around working with people around welfare reform and digital access to welfare receipt, the whole DWP, that kind of shenanigans. And I was working with a gentleman who was severely dyslexic, ex-miner, that's where my research took place in South Yorkshire. And he was let go only from a job not because he was bad at the job, but because they were putting into place a lot of digital measures to tracking, to reporting. So while the guy was perfectly able to actually do the quite manual job that he was doing, he was let go because he could not do the reporting, he couldn't do the writing, he didn't understand, all the digital tools, etc. And I was wondering if, like in your work, you're also focusing on talking to employers about, not just upskilling, but also that understanding of if they're going to implement something new, that it might not suit everyone and it doesn't take them away from doing the actual job that they were hired to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Gabby. And about a year and a half ago, we started getting 2 or 3 of our big blue chip clients came back and said, look, there's a bit of a reality tablet here, guys, wake up. We love your candidates and we love what you're trying to do, but nobody's getting past the applicant tracking system. And also our interview process seems to be, falling flat. What can you do? So what we have come up with is basically what we call a product, which we call Inclusive Hiring Roadmap, which is effectively an advisory product. So we don't do D&I, we don't even understand 99% of it, but we do understand an inclusive candidate pathway. And so we'll help organizations look at their processes from start to finish. So from that sourcing, are you sourcing broadly enough? Then through your job descriptions, are they alienating certain groups? What about the interview or interrogation process, blah, blah, blah. And then absolutely what's happening once they've got into work, and are you retaining them and all that kind of stuff. So we're doing that with quite a few big blue chips right now, and coming back with some really simple recommendations, usually that don't cost any money, don't take any time, but make a massive difference. So there's that kind of advisory bit, but also we've been racking our brains a little bit, because we're also saying, well, look, we're trying to be digital here, we can't do the hand holding, we've made that clear. What can we do to make sure we improve retention? I mean, typically it is much higher, better retention for our group, as proven by the CIBD. They work harder, stay longer, come with grit. But how can we help that even more? And so we've got we partner with an organization called Rialto, and they have think of it like WhatsApp on steroids. So it's like an app, but you can communicate with groups, you can share stuff, you do surveys, all GDPR compliant, so you can't ring somebody up that evening and say, harass them, etc. And it's great for the connectivity. So you're bringing on a group of people into your organization, they can be in a group, or you've got an ERG, which is your Pride ERG, or your employee resource group, or whatever, they can talk to each other. So it provides that connective tissue that can be shared. So, and we're using it for our ambassador network as well. But we've got a long way to go on that. It's the honest answer.
Yeah. And just if I chip in on the masterclasses as well, which is something that I always make mention of and talk to people about understanding the different neurodivergence, such as I'm dyslexic, for instance. And so I would encourage understanding my creative mind, the way I think creatively, and so marketing, business development, talking about ideas and things like that really suit me well. Whereas my partner who's ADHD, autistic, has that pinpoint focus. Software development could be for that person. And in fact, it's about understanding the reason why we actually would find a superhero movie where everyone's got the same powers so boring. It's because they aggregate all their incredible powers together to become a force to be reckoned with, which is why they're able to win. And that's what our workplaces should look like. Aggregate all those different powers by understanding them to become a force to be reckoned with.
Thank you, Chance, and thank you, James. I could see a point there from Kim in the chat, which says that she went to homeless service in Bromley. And we always struggle with those that come from prison or who have a forensic history. We had a particular issue with someone who was on a life sentence. So it's really good to hear of your work. And you do hear it. You know, I regularly recruit, as I say, and often because of the roles I'm recruiting in, people come with a criminal record, and immediately there's an element of, have they got a DBS? Yes. Is it clear? No. Right. Well, there's an immediate back step. I suppose because of the methods that because that's almost on the table from day one, do you find that actually there's more receptiveness to the conversations you're trying to hold there, or do you still get that stigmatizing yourselves when you find it, when working with the clients that you're speaking to?
I think a lot depends on the maturity, for want of a better word, of the client. So yeah, I mean, we're still getting some clients that, will absolutely not touch somebody who's been in prison with a 12-foot barge pole. But they're typically certain sectors, and they're, dare I say it, white, middle class, middle-aged, privileged, etc. And then you get others who are actively doing the opposite. So we have a number of clients that are saying we want to really lean into the ex-offender community. I mean, a caveat to us is it's probably only 5 to 6% of our candidate pool anyway. And people get hung up on that community, and we're like, well, don't forget, you've got all these other ones, neurodiverse, veterans, residents from housing associations we just talked about. So all of these groups don't get completely hung up about the ex-offender, but people do, and we understand why. So there is a continuum. I think generally there's been a big positive shift, and I think the James Timpson thing is going to make it even more different, because he really gets it. He's leading from the front. And for God's, for the first time for centuries, we've actually got a minister who knows how to spell their brief. So we have a lot of confidence and hope there.
And I can see that Clara put in the chat that she's constantly campaigning against the collection of EDI data when it's not used in any meaningful way, and trying to highlight that being inclusive is not about what you do. So it's about what you do, not about what statistics you gather. And I think that probably speaks very truly to what you're saying there. Yes, Jim. I'll bring you back in.
Cheers. Hi. Puts me in my brother Peter. He was the army chaplain at Wandsworth Prison, yeah? The prison chaplain. Sorry, he went from Wandsworth to become an army chaplain. But he told me of a situation. He didn't name the person, but they were serving a term in prison. And while they were in prison, what they did is they devised a new form of Braille. And this was accepted and very, very well received. So here is an example of somebody who can be in that situation. You don't know what the reasons are behind it, and nor would you really necessarily want to. But given the opportunities, what can come from reintegration into society, if we're to believe that prison is there to, help people to go back into society, and, the actual punishment is losing the time, isn't it? Losing the freedom. So I think that if we truly are to believe in rehabilitation, that this is the step forward.
Yeah, that's really thanks for sharing that. There's some incredible innovation that takes place inside prisons, I can tell you, which is really quite remarkable. Forms of engineering and all sorts, but we've got a masterclass coming up, and we're holding this particular masterclass inside Brixton Prison. We're bringing CEOs, we're bringing corporate bodies, hiring managers into Brixton Prison. We're going to run a masterclass in the restaurant they have in Brixton Prison called the Clink, which is almost a Michelin star restaurant. It's incredible experience. So super immersive stuff, and so it's really important. And like mentioning the sort of families behind candidates as well, it's really important to understand that there is a child behind many of these people, and if we don't support them, it will have a knock-on effect on the child as well. And I'll tell you why. My son, throughout my life, whether I was good or bad, he always said, "Dad, I love you." And it's beautiful to hear that from him. But one day, with all the changes I made in my life, he came up to me one day and said, "Dad, I love who you are." And that moved me. That almost brought me to tears. And it made me start to think about all the other families from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I thought, of course, the children love them, but do they love who they are? Because it's when they love who they are, that's when inspiration strikes in our household and ricochets out as a positive light in our communities. And my son now has just landed himself a job as a teacher's assistant. He wants to help people like I do, he said. And so it does have a knock-on effect. So when people come across people and think, oh, do I support this person or not? Just take a moment, breathe, and think to yourself, I wonder if there's a family behind this person. I wonder what I can do and how we're helping this person nourish our communities.
That's so right. And there's a lovely note from, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Joe.
No, sorry. There's a point from Gabby in the chat which said one big gap you might already be exploring is helping those of your clients onto housing association boards, particularly if they're a tenant or that of a housing association. I know we've got Lara with us today, who I just saw nodding along. So is that something that you're finding is it isn't always necessarily about, you know, the traditional roles that we might be kind of searching for people. It's things like boards or ways to explain, you know, extend your voice in the way that I guess, you know, both Chance and James, you've had the chance to yourselves too.
I'd flip it the other way around, to be honest. Back to the bit about we want to be the channel at scale. I think if you're the housing authority, I mean, the social housing group, and you've got somebody really good, put them on that board. That will make them way more marketable and way more recruitable, and we can get them a much better job. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And there's another thing, you can go a step further and actually introduce some of these candidates, people who are passionate about supporting change, to ambassador networks and other groups, because they'll go in and say, look, I know a few people who could do a job here. I know a few people who from charities who can support this end. And these networks, they help to join those dots. So please, if anyone could have a look on my LinkedIn, you'll see posts about the ambassadors network and things like that. Because we all truly want to shift the needle on social mobility, but we know we can't do it alone. We can only do this in coalition with each other. And so definitely give me a shout on that as well.
And is Deirdre still on the?
Yes, I am.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I've only just seen some of the original chats. So apologies. Thank you for your lovely comments. Did you want to add anything?
Oh gosh, did I want to add anything?
You talked about work with the police, housing associations.
Oh yes, no. So I my day job, governance, my heartbeat, but my soul is everything else in terms of and how that links into supporting organizations to be meaningful and to have heart in leadership. So I chair a domestic abuse charity. I have lived experience in that. I started a CIP program, which is bringing women who are female offenders, reintegrating them back into society. I did something in relation to my mom used to call him my husband. So to my husband, which got me into a little bit of trouble with the law. So I have a little bit of experience with that. And I also used to chair the Lunar Society, which is a 250-year-old think tank. I took over from the former Home Secretary, Jackie Smith.
Wow.
For that. And I was a bit, I curate the Sir Adrian Cadbury lecture. And last year we had Nadeem Zahawi speak. And there was a lot of flack because, oh, he was not the right person. But I had him speak from the perspective of restorative integrity. And so I'm really interested in what you're doing, because I think that you're right. The empathy needs to be there at the heart of bringing people and bringing the background of who they are into the foreground so that they can be meaningful and effective individuals, giving back to society.
Well, we share a philosophy completely. Thank you so much for that. Pop your email, Deirdre, and we'll have a chat offline if we can help in any way.
Absolutely.
You know, the door's wide open. You've got a very impressive background, so huge congratulations for doing all of that. Sounds incredible.
Thank you.
We'd love to chat more.
Fabulous, thank you. I'll put my Parasol Homes email address in the chat, so please do reach out.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't put their email and would like us to do a talk, we're probably down to the last couple of minutes, so please put it in your chat, because otherwise we won't know where you are or how to contact you. Matt, should we pass it back to you, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, so Sharon had, I think it was Sharon. Yeah, Sharon had said that there was a website called Children Heard and Seen, which is a fantastic charity for children with a parent in prison. So something to check out there. Dave, you said one more question. Was that something to ask, or was that just notifying us of time? Oh yeah, please, Dave, if you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, it's a very, very quick question relating to our sector specifically, Matt, and to the guys. I've been doing a lot of work in the homeless area recently, and one area that I feel is a great example of recruitment, in fact, building a business is, in fact, I'm wearing the t-shirt. It's no disrespect to the call, but it's called Social Bite in Edinburgh, which is a company that recruits nothing. You'll know James and the guys there. You know, so I wonder if you specifically look out for homeless people that are looking for jobs, right? Because they're probably one of the most vulnerable people they've got. Their self-esteem is low. So just a quick chat on that one. I know you're running a short time.
Well, we'd love to chat offline. And by the way, I think Social Bite are brilliant.
Yeah, I know the call.
And we'd love to help anybody from Social Bite. Just on homeless, I think, you know, we see them as another group, a very important group. We're particularly passionate about that group, but we don't typically work with the individuals. It's a bit like with people coming out of, we work with the charities, the crisis, St. Mungo's, etc., who've got them back on their feet, put a roof above their head, got them ready to go, got a bank account, and then they're ready for a job. Yeah. Because they're not ready for a job when they're still under a bridge, much as we'd like to try and help them. So we use the intermediary to get them ready, and then we try and put them into work.
Because there's a link to offenders leaving as well that become homeless. You know, there's
absolutely.
Domestic abuse victims can become homeless due to fear. So it's an area I think we need to focus on more.
You know, anyone. I mean, sometimes it's just a couple of paychecks away from being homeless.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, we're really passionate about this. In my personal time, we, you know, feed the homeless at Christmas, but it's not just food. We create an inclusive Christmas, so they get presents, they get Christmas cards from the local schools, they get the Christmas jumper, all of that, and they get a group of people who are dedicated just to share stories with them and make them real.
Let's find some time to chat, because I'm about to do an initiative with Social Bite, and I'd like to kind of link you guys up to that.
Yeah, brilliant.
Pop your email there, Dave, if that's okay.
So Matt's got it. I'll pass it on.
Certainly do.
Okay,
awesome, excellent.
Thank you.
Well, James, Chance, thank you both so much. And where we're literally with about a minute left to go. Is there anything you'd like to say, just as final words?
Well, Matt, first of all, thank you very, very much. Hazel, thank you for introducing us. That means the world. And we love the engagement. Hopefully you found something useful out of it. If we can help, please get in touch. We're here. We can't do this by ourselves. We believe in, passionately believe in this. Do you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Gabby, Sharon, Jim, Dave, Clint, everyone on the call. Thank you so much for all of this, you know, and anyone who supports people in housing. We would love to get them on board so they can be facing inclusive employers. And my last thing that I always say to anyone in the recruiting space is to simply stop recruiting and start changing lives, because if you do that, the interview questions will change and your attitude to recruitment will be different.
I couldn't agree more. And if we can actually abolish interviews as a means to test whether someone can be a good housing officer, then all the better. But that's a whole nother discussion we can have ourselves. Thank you, James. Thank you, Chance. Next week, if anyone is wanting to follow on with the Social Housing Roundtable, particularly if you're new, very different themes. Zoe Benjamin is coming on to talk about human-centric cybersecurity in social housing, which is a wonderful tongue twister for a Tuesday morning. But for now, just a massive thank you to James, to Chance. Do follow up. I'll be putting up a post on LinkedIn so you can all connect and tag with each other as well. But for now, thank you to you all. Thank you for today, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Bye.